Never freeze lettuce, but you can absolutely freeze cabbage. Today I'm going to be sharing with you some of these examples of things you can't freeze, but I'm not going to leave you hanging. I'm also going to be telling you ways to be able to freeze things better and ways to maximize the money that you are spending on groceries, because nobody wants things to go to waste in the fridge or in the freezer. Welcome to Freezer Meals 101. If you pop down to the description below after you watch this video, you can grab your free cheat sheet for what freezes, what doesn't, and how to freeze things. This has got great tips for you, and it's a great visual to have in your kitchen or have at your fingertips. Now, I'm just going to be sharing a few things with you today to give you some of the basics. We're not going to go through line by line or anything, but I think that you're going to get a lot out of what I'm going to be sharing today, because there are some things that you might not realize that you could freeze, and knowing this can help you maximize your grocery dollars, because then you can take advantage of sales at your grocery store. One example is milk. Did you know that you can freeze milk in the containers? Now, there is a trick to doing this though, because when things freeze, they expand. So if you get milk fresh from the store and just put it straight into your freezer, there's a chance that as it expands, the plastic could break. So what you want to do is pour out a quarter cup to half a cup before you get this into your freezer. Now, it's great to freeze milk if you get it on sale and you have extra freezer space. Now, it's not a great use of your freezer space if freezer space is a premium for you, because it's not a high ticket grocery item, and so then you'll want to use your freezer space for things like meals and meats. But if you've got like a chest freezer in the basement and it's just sitting there doing its thing, then absolutely you can freeze milk. However, you never want to freeze milk in a recipe. It will completely ruin the sauce upon thawing. And nobody wants a casserole or a pasta sauce with texture issues. There is a way to save that recipe though. If you substitute heavy cream or evaporated milk for the milk, just a 1-to-1 ratio, then you can completely salvage that recipe. It's freezer safe. The meal is going to hold up super well to freezing and thawing, and your family is going to be able to enjoy it fully. Now, if you're concerned about the extra calories in the heavy cream, then you can instead do something like half chicken broth and half heavy cream, depending on the recipe. So it's a little bit of a judgment call there. If it's something like a pasta sauce that has chicken in it, then of course chicken broth is going to taste great in the recipe and it's going to go well. So that one is more of a recipe by recipe thing, but that is an option for you if you're looking to lower the calories in the recipe. Now, getting back to our cabbage, cabbage freezes well on its own, but it also freezes beautifully in recipes. We've got a pretty popular recipe. It's our egg roll in a bowl that uses cabbage, and for that we actually use bags of coleslaw, because then the cabbage is already cut for us and we can just go ahead and add that directly into the recipe, and it holds up so well in the freezer. So if you grow your own cabbage, if you can find a sale on cabbage, or if your neighbor grows cabbage and gives you a lot of their harvest, then you can go ahead and get that in your freezer. Cabbage rolls freeze beautifully. There's cabbage roll casserole on our website that you can find that also freezes well. So all kinds of options for your cabbage. We also have a cabbage soup. Yeah, you can go to freezermeals101.com if you're looking for recipes for that cabbage. Another thing that I get asked questions about is cucumbers. Now, cucumbers, you should never ever freeze them. Their water content is too high and they do not hold up at all in your freezer. However, pickles which used to be cucumbers, freeze super well. We actually have a recipe called Kathy's Lazy Rouladen that uses pickles, and it is also really popular. So you can freeze the pickles, but unfortunately you're only going to be able to eat those cucumbers fresh. Now, another vegetable I get asked about a lot is tomatoes. Unfortunately, you don't really want to freeze fresh tomatoes. Now, there are some exceptions, like if you were cooking fresh tomatoes and then it was going into your freezer meal, that would be okay, but you don't want to like toss in just some baby tomatoes into your meal and then on the day of it's not going to cook up as well. One thing that we do is we've got several sheet pan meals, like our Mediterranean chicken sheet pan meal or our lemon pepper cod sheet pan, where what we suggest is that you freeze everything else in the sauce, in the marinade. It all goes in your freezer bag, it's sitting in your freezer, and then on the day of, as you're putting it on the sheet pan, you just wash up those tomatoes, throw them on there, and get it in the oven. That way, everything comes out exactly as it should, and everybody's happy. However, you can freeze canned tomatoes in recipes. So whether it's diced, whole, crushed tomato sauce, tomato paste, condensed tomato soup, anything tomato-wise that's in a can or a glass jar, like a tomato pasta sauce, will freeze and you will be super happy with how it holds up for you. Another vegetable, and I know tomato is actually a fruit and I said vegetable, but potato is definitely a vegetable, and this is one that there's a bit of controversy about. Did you know there could be controversy in the freezer cooking space? Well, if there is any controversy other than the freezer bags, it is the potatoes. Some people say that they can freeze raw potatoes, they put them in their meal, and it comes out well. We are of the camp that raw potatoes should never be frozen. It's been our experience that the texture changes. Sometimes they turn black in recipes. Oh, they get mealy. It's not a good situation. Take our advice and don't risk your potatoes by putting them into a freezer meal. However, cooked potatoes freeze every day of the week. So we have a garlic mashed potatoes recipe that right now, actually, I have it in my freezer ready to give my son, who just got his own place a little bit ago. And I used an ice cream scoop to scoop big scoops onto a baking sheet, put it in. I'm gonna grab it for you. Hold on one second. All right, these are his mashed potatoes. As you can see, these are perfect for individual servings because they're already portioned out. So cooked potatoes are a yes from us. Raw potatoes are a definite no. Now, another way that you can get potatoes into your freezer meals is to use already frozen potatoes like hash browns or tater tots. Because some of our meals are kid-friendly, we have a fair amount of tater tot casseroles on our site. We also have some hash brown casseroles. We've got a really good beef hash. So you can go ahead and use those frozen potatoes in any recipe that you like. There are some other vegetables with a high water content, like celery, onions, and peppers, like bell peppers, that don't freeze well on their own. They can be frozen, but there are some texture differences once you thaw them, if you freeze them just on their own. But all of those things freeze exceptionally well within recipes. As a matter of fact, like the majority of our recipes probably use onions. Celeries freeze really well in soups and stews. So you can go ahead and get peppers, celery, and onions into your freezer meals. Freezing them on their own, it doesn't completely ruin them, but they're one of those, like, we're kind of on the fence about those. So we prefer to only freeze them within recipes. Frozen grapes are delicious and one of my kids' favorite snacks. All you need to do frozen grapes is wash your grapes, lay them out on a baking sheet, freeze them. When they're fully frozen, transfer them into a freezer bag or container and eat frozen grapes to your heart's content. However, you don't want to thaw those grapes and then eat them. Freezing the grapes does change the texture and consistency, and they taste amazing frozen. They do not taste good once they are thawed. So you can check out the cheat sheet for all kinds of other tips. There are some vegetables that freeze better if they're blanched first before they go in the freezer. So you can find all that information there. Now I just want to give you a few tips before I sign off. I'm trying to keep this video short. I have a tendency in my videos to like go on and on and on and share lots of stories, and I'm still here to share the stories. Don't worry, for those of you that are here for the stories. I will be sharing stories in pretty much every other video, but I wanted to keep this one super informational and concise, so I'm just going to be sharing a few more tips before I sign off. These are important though. If you want to freeze pasta, then first, gluten-free pasta in our experience does not hold up well in the freezer, so we suggest for gluten-free pasta that you just cook it up the day of, but you can go ahead and freeze whatever sauce that you're going to be doing, or if it's like more of a pasta bake, you can go ahead and do up everything else and just cook the pasta and mix it in on the day that you're going to be serving it. Now for regular pasta, it does freeze well, but there is a trick. What you want to do is you want to undercook that pasta 1 to 2 minutes under what the package suggests, and then you're going to drain it, rinse it. You want to make sure you cool it before you get it in your freezer. That's another tip to extend the longevity of the things that you get in the freezer. You only want to put cooled ingredients or items into your freezer. Lots of reasons for that, but in short, the biggest two are you don't want to thaw other things that are already frozen in around those items in your freezer and create an unsafe food environment. And 2, you don't want to create condensation in your bag, which can lead to earlier freezer burn and things not lasting as long in your freezer. So you want to get that pasta cooled before you get it into your freezer container or your freezer bag. And then, because it is undercooked, on the day you go to bake it, it's not going to be mushy. And we can all celebrate not having to eat mushy pasta, right? Another one is rice. Rice does freeze, but again, you just want to cool it before you get it into your recipe and into your freezer. I'm going to give you a warning before I share one more tip with you. The warning is this: sauces that use flour or cornstarch in a thickener tend to separate in the freezer. So we suggest that you do your sauce without the thickener and that you just add a cornstarch slurry, which is when you mix cold water with a bit of cornstarch, mix that together really well and put it into your sauce on the day you go to make this, because that way you're not risking having your sauce separate. So that is like my cautionary tale. And then 2 more quick tips. One is if you're going to freeze something that you want to be able to take out individually. So examples would be things like waffles, pancakes, taquitos, anything that you just want to be able to take one out of, like quesadillas. Then what you're going to do is you're going to lay them flat on a baking sheet, get them in your freezer. Once they're fully frozen, then you can transfer them into the freezer bag, because then they're not going to stick together. So when you go to pull out a waffle to put it in your toaster, let's say, which is exactly what I did this morning before I started talking with you, then they don't stick together. It works perfectly and everybody's happy. The very last tip that I'm going to share with you today is that you should come and join us in the Freezer Meals 101 Club, because there we teach you not only how to freeze things, but we share our very best recipes with you, and we even cook along with you in our monthly live cooking classes. And there are the added benefits of you being able to create your own custom meal plan with a shopping list, a prep list, and printable labels that have the cooking instructions, the name of the recipe, and the date, because this is why this tip fits so well in this video. The date is important because freezer meals last generally between 3 to 6 months. So you want to make sure that you rotate them and use those older ones first. And if you have the date on there, then at a glance, you know exactly how long that's been in your freezer and you can make the most of what's in there. I hope that these tips helped. Thank you so much for joining us today and happy cooking.